The Roman Empire remains one of the most significant civilizations in world history, shaping political institutions, military strategies, cultural traditions, and economic systems that continue to influence modern society. At its peak, Rome's vast dominion stretched from Britain to the Middle East, integrating diverse cultures under a single administrative framework. The empire's rise was driven by disciplined military conquests, effective governance, and a strong economy, while its decline was marked by internal strife, economic turmoil, and external invasions. Examining the trajectory of Rome provides invaluable insights into the nature of power, governance, and civilization itself. Rome's influence extended into nearly every aspect of life, leaving an enduring legacy. Politically, it introduced governance structures that continue to shape modern states. The Roman Republic pioneered concepts of lawmaking, representative government, and checks on authority, which later influenced the development of democratic systems in the United States and Europe. Militarily, Rome's legions were unparalleled in discipline and strategy, revolutionizing warfare through their organization, tactics, and engineering feats such as roads and fortifications. The empire's cultural influence was equally profound, as it assimilated Greek philosophy, art, and literature while developing its own rich traditions. The Latin language evolved into the Romance languages, and Roman law became the foundation for many legal systems worldwide. Economically, Rome built an extensive trade network that facilitated commerce across Europe, Africa, and Asia, allowing for the spread of goods, ideas, and technologies. Historians have long studied Rome through the works of ancient writers who chronicled its political and military history. Tacitus, a senator and historian, provided sharp critiques of imperial rule, particularly under tyrannical emperors. Livy, in contrast, offered a sweeping account of Rome's rise, often emphasizing moral lessons and patriotism. Suetonius, through his The 12 Caesars, provided biographical insights into the rulers of Rome, detailing their governance, personal lives, and scandals. These sources, along with archaeological discoveries, form the foundation of modern scholarship on Rome, helping historians understand its complexities. Even after its fall, Rome's legacy endured in governance, law, and culture. The legal principles developed in the empire, such as codified laws and the idea of justice, remain embedded in many legal traditions today. Architecturally, Roman innovations in concrete, domes, and aqueducts influenced the design of modern cities and infrastructure. The philosophical and literary contributions of Roman thinkers continue to be studied, reflecting the empire's intellectual depth. Despite its eventual decline, the Roman Empire's impact on civilization is immeasurable, serving as both a model and a cautionary tale for the rise and fall of great powers. Through its achievements and failures, Rome offers lasting lessons on the endurance and fragility of empires. The origins of Rome are deeply intertwined with mythology, archaeology, and early historical records, creating a fascinating narrative of how a small settlement on the banks of the Tiber River evolved into one of the most powerful civilizations in history. According to Roman mythology, the city was founded in 753 BCE by Romulus, who, along with his twin brother Remus, was the son of the war god Mars and a mortal woman named Rhea Silvia. As the legend goes, the twins were abandoned at birth and left to die by the ruling king, but they were miraculously saved by a she-wolf who nurtured them until a shepherd named Faustulus took them in and raised them. When they grew up, Romulus and Remus sought to establish a new city but argued over its location. In a tragic turn of events, Romulus killed his brother and named the city after himself, establishing Rome as its first king. While this tale is steeped in legend, it reflects the Romans' perception of themselves as a people with divine origins and a destiny for greatness. Beyond mythology, archaeological evidence suggests that Rome began as a collection of small settlements on the Palatine Hill, one of the 7 hills of Rome, around the 8th century BCE. These early settlers were primarily Latin-speaking peoples who engaged in agriculture and trade along the Tiber River. However, Rome's development was significantly influenced by the neighboring Etruscans, a highly advanced civilization that dominated central Italy before the rise of Rome. The Etruscans, who had strong trade connections with the Greeks and Phoenicians, introduced several key innovations to early Rome, including urban planning, architecture, religious practices, and a sophisticated political system. The Etruscans were responsible for constructing some of Rome's earliest temples, roads, and drainage systems, including the Cloaca Maxima, one of the world's oldest sewage systems. The Romans also adopted aspects of Etruscan culture, such as the use of the toga, gladiatorial combat, and religious rituals, which would later become defining features of Roman society. The influence of the Etruscans lasted until the late 6th century BCE, when Rome transitioned from a monarchy to a republic. According to historical tradition, the last Roman king, Tarquinius Superbus, was a tyrannical ruler who was eventually overthrown by a group of Roman aristocrats led by Lucius Junius Brutus. This event, traditionally dated to 509 BCE, marked the birth of the Roman Republic, a new political system in which power was shared among elected officials rather than concentrated in a single ruler. The transition from monarchy to republic was a pivotal moment in Roman history, setting the stage for Rome's expansion and governance structures that would influence future civilizations. The early republic was characterized by a system of checks and balances, with 2 annually elected consuls serving as the highest officials, and a Senate composed of aristocratic leaders who advised on matters of state. However, this new system also led to social and political struggles, particularly between the ruling aristocracy and the common people. One of the most defining aspects of early Roman society was its rigid social hierarchy, which was divided into 3 main classes: the patricians, the plebeians, and the slaves. The patricians were the elite, landowning class who claimed descent from Rome's original aristocratic families. They controlled political power, held high-ranking positions in the government and military, and dominated the Senate. In contrast, the plebeians were the commoners, farmers, artisans, and merchants who had limited political rights and were often subject to the authority of the patrician class. Despite their lack of representation in the early republic, the plebeians played a crucial role in Rome's economy and military, which eventually led to a series of social struggles known as the conflict of the orders. Over time, the plebeians demanded greater political rights, resulting in significant reforms, such as the creation of the office of the tribune of the plebs, which allowed them to have representatives who could veto unjust laws. At the bottom of Roman society were the slaves, who were primarily prisoners of war, debtors, or individuals born into servitude. Slavery was an integral part of the Roman economy, as slaves worked in households, farms, mines, and even public construction projects. Unlike in some other ancient civilizations, Roman slaves could sometimes earn their freedom through a process called manumission, and freed slaves, known as liberti, could integrate into society and even attain wealth and influence. However, for the majority, life as a slave was harsh, and large-scale slave revolts, such as the famous uprising led by Spartacus in the 1st century BCE, demonstrated the deep tensions within Roman society. The establishment of the Roman Republic and its early social structures laid the foundation for Rome's future expansion and governance. The Republic's emphasis on legal frameworks, civic duty, and military strength would allow Rome to grow from a small city-state into a vast empire. However, the tensions between the social classes, particularly the struggle for equality between patricians and plebeians, would continue to shape Roman politics for centuries. The origins of Rome, whether in myth or reality, reflect a civilization deeply rooted in tradition, power struggles, and adaptability, traits that would define its rise to dominance in the ancient world. The expansion of the Roman Republic was a defining period in Rome's history, during which it transformed from a small city-state into a dominant power, controlling vast territories across the Mediterranean. This expansion was driven primarily by Rome's formidable military system, strategic alliances, and relentless ambition. Central to this success was the Roman military, particularly the legions, which became the backbone of Roman power. Unlike many ancient armies that relied on loosely organized militias, The Roman military was a highly structured and disciplined force. The legions were composed of citizen soldiers who underwent rigorous training and fought in tight formations. Each legion was divided into cohorts and centuries, allowing for flexibility in battle. Soldiers were heavily armored, carried large shields, and wielded short swords known as gladii, which were particularly effective in close combat. Unlike the hoplite-based warfare of the Greeks, which relied on a rigid phalanx formation, the Roman manipular system allowed for more dynamic movements, giving them an advantage on diverse terrains. Additionally, Rome's ability to recruit soldiers from conquered territories helped sustain its military strength over centuries. The promise of land, wealth, and Roman citizenship also motivated soldiers to fight fiercely for the Republic. Rome's initial expansion focused on securing dominance over the Italian peninsula, a process that took several centuries and involved prolonged conflicts with neighboring peoples. One of the most significant early wars was the struggle against the Samnites, known as the Samnite Wars, 343 to 290 BC. The Samnites, a fierce and independent people living in the central Apennine Mountains, posed a major challenge to Roman expansion. These wars saw Rome adapt and refine its military strategies, particularly in mountainous terrain, where traditional formations were less effective. After a series of hard-fought battles, Rome emerged victorious, bringing much of central Italy under its control. Rome also had to contend with the Latin League, a confederation of Latin city-states that initially allied with Rome but later rebelled due to growing Roman dominance. The Latin War, 340 to 338 BCE, resulted in Rome dissolving the League and incorporating its members directly into the Roman political system, offering some Latin cities full Roman citizenship while granting others a more limited status. This policy of partial inclusion became a hallmark of Roman expansion, allowing Rome to integrate conquered peoples rather than simply subjugating them. As Rome solidified its power in Italy, it turned its attention to the wider Mediterranean, leading to one of the most famous and consequential conflicts in ancient history, the Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BC. These wars were fought between Rome and Carthage, a powerful maritime empire based in North Africa. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE, was primarily a naval conflict, as Rome sought to challenge Carthage's dominance at sea. Although Rome initially lacked naval experience, it quickly adapted by developing a fleet and introducing the corvus, a boarding device that allowed Roman soldiers to turn sea battles into land-style combat, where they excelled. After years of struggle, Rome emerged victorious and gained control of Sicily, marking its first major expansion beyond the Italian mainland. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, was even more dramatic and is best remembered for the exploits of the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca, one of the greatest military strategists in history. Hannibal famously led his army, including war elephants, across the Alps into Italy, taking the Romans by surprise. His victories at the Battle of Trebia, 218 BC, Lake Trasimene, 217 BC, and the devastating Battle of Cannae, 216 BC, nearly brought Rome to its knees. At Cannae, Hannibal's forces encircled and annihilated a Roman army nearly twice their size, delivering one of the worst defeats in Roman history. Despite these losses, Rome refused to surrender, showcasing its resilience and strategic depth. Under the leadership of Scipio Africanus, Rome eventually took the war to Carthage, forcing Hannibal to return to defend his homeland. At the decisive Battle of Zama, 202 BCE, Scipio outmaneuvered Hannibal, securing a Roman victory and cementing Rome's supremacy in the western Mediterranean. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BC, was more of a one-sided conflict as Rome, fearing a resurgence of Carthaginian power, launched a final assault on Carthage. The city was besieged, utterly destroyed, and its population either killed or sold into slavery. This marked the complete obliteration of Carthage and confirmed Rome's dominance over North Africa. With Carthage eliminated, Rome turned eastward, engaging in wars with the Hellenistic kingdoms that had emerged after the death of Alexander the Great. The conquest of Macedonia and Greece in the 2nd century BC, it brought Rome into direct contact with Greek culture, which profoundly influenced Roman society. Although Rome had long admired Greek achievements in philosophy, art, literature, and science, its military victories over Greece facilitated a deeper cultural exchange. Wealthy Roman elites began adopting Greek customs, studying Greek philosophy, and commissioning Greek-style sculptures and architecture. The works of Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates found new audiences in Rome, shaping Roman intellectual life. Greek tutors became highly sought after in Roman households, and the study of rhetoric, a fundamental aspect of Greek education, became essential for any aspiring Roman politician. Even in religion, many Greek gods were assimilated into the Roman pantheon, often with different names, such as Zeus becoming Jupiter and Hermes becoming Mercury. The Romans also embraced Greek theater and literature, with playwrights like Plautus and Terence drawing inspiration from Greek comedies. However, while Rome admired Greek culture, it maintained its own identity, blending Greek influences with its distinctly pragmatic and militaristic traditions. By the end of this period of expansion, Rome had transformed from a regional power into a dominant force spanning the Mediterranean. The conquest of Italy, the destruction of Carthage, and the absorption of Greek culture all contributed to the growing complexity of Roman society. While Rome's military strength was unparalleled, its expansion also brought new challenges, including governing diverse populations, managing wealth disparities, and dealing with political corruption. These growing tensions would eventually lead to internal strife and the gradual decline of the Republic. However, at this stage, Rome stood at the height of its power, an unstoppable force shaping the course of Western civilization. The fall of the Roman Republic was a gradual yet dramatic process, marked by social unrest, political corruption, and the rise of powerful individuals who sought personal dominance over the traditional republican institutions. For centuries, Rome had functioned under a system where power was distributed among elected officials, primarily the Senate and popular assemblies. However, as Rome expanded and accumulated vast wealth, inequalities between the elite and the common people deepened, leading to internal conflicts that destabilized the Republic. One of the earliest and most significant crises came with the reforms proposed by Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, two brothers who sought to address the growing economic disparity and political corruption in Rome. Tiberius Gracchus, elected tribune in 133 BCE, saw that Rome's agricultural economy was suffering due to the increasing concentration of land in the hands of the elite. Many small farmers, who once formed the backbone of the Roman army, had lost their land and migrated to cities, particularly Rome, where they lived in poverty. To address this, Tiberius proposed a radical land reform that aimed to redistribute public land to poor citizens. While this was an attempt to revive Rome's agrarian base and empower the lower classes, it was fiercely opposed by the Senate, which represented the interests of the wealthy landowning class. Tiberius bypassed traditional senatorial approval and took his reforms directly to the popular assemblies, a move that enraged the aristocracy. The conflict escalated, and in a shocking turn, Tiberius was murdered by a group of senators, marking one of the first instances of political violence in the late Republic. A decade later, his younger brother Gaius Gracchus attempted to carry on his legacy, expanding his reforms to include grain subsidies for the poor, judicial reforms, and the extension of Roman citizenship to Italian allies. Gaius was even more radical than his brother, and his proposals directly challenged the Senate's authority. The backlash against him was even greater, and in 121 BCE, he was declared an enemy of the state. In a bloody confrontation between his supporters and the Senate's forces, Gaius was killed and thousands of his followers were executed. The failure of the Gracchi reforms exposed deep fractures in Roman society and set a dangerous precedent where political disputes were no longer resolved through debate, but through violence. This period of unrest created a power vacuum that ambitious military generals sought to exploit, leading to the rise of men who would ultimately dismantle the Republic. One of the first military figures to challenge the traditional republican system was Gaius Marius, a brilliant general and politician who rose to power through his military achievements rather than aristocratic lineage. Marius introduced significant military reforms, allowing landless citizens to enlist in the army, which transformed Rome's military structure. Previously, only property-owning citizens could serve as soldiers, but Marius' reforms created a professional army loyal not to the Senate, but to their generals who promised them land and wealth. This shift fundamentally altered Roman politics, as ambitious leaders could now leverage their personal armies to gain political power. Marius' rivalry with another powerful general, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, would further destabilize Rome. Sulla, a staunch supporter of the Senate's authority, emerged as a major force during Rome's wars in the East. When he was initially denied command of a military campaign, he marched his army into Rome, an unprecedented move, seizing control of the government in 88 BCE. This event marked the first time that a Roman general had used military force against the city itself, breaking a fundamental norm of the Republic. Sulla declared himself dictator, a position traditionally reserved for emergencies and limited in duration. However, Sulla expanded his rule indefinitely and launched proscriptions, lists of political enemies who were executed and their property confiscated. Though Sulla eventually stepped down from power, the precedent he set, that a general could march on Rome and rule by force, would be echoed in the years to come, particularly by Julius Caesar. As Rome continued to expand, internal divisions grew, culminating in one of the most famous figures of Roman history, Julius Caesar. A charismatic general and statesman, Caesar gained immense popularity through his military campaigns, particularly his conquest of Gaul, modern-day France, between 58 and 50 BCE. His victories not only brought vast wealth to Rome, but also elevated his status as a leader of the people. However, his growing influence alarmed the Senate and his former ally, Pompey the Great, leading to a civil war. In 49 BCE, Caesar defied the Senate's order to disband his army and famously crossed the Rubicon River, declaring war against the Roman state with the words, Alia iacta est, the die is cast. This marked the beginning of the end for the Republic. Caesar's swift victories in the Civil War made him the most powerful man in Rome. By 45 BCE, he had declared himself dictator for life, effectively dismantling the Republic. While he implemented several reforms, such as granting citizenship to more people in the provinces, reforming the calendar, introducing the Julian calendar, and redistributing land, his growing power worried the Senate. Many feared that he would make himself king, a position that Rome had despised since the fall of the monarchy in 509 BCE. On March 15, 44 BCE, the Ides of March, a group of senators led by Brutus and Cassius assassinated Caesar in the Senate chamber, stabbing him 23 times. They believed that by killing him, they could restore the Republic, but instead, his death plunged Rome into further chaos and civil war. Following Caesar's assassination, a new power struggle emerged, leading to the formation of the Second Triumvirate, a political alliance between Mark Antony, Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, and Marcus Lepidus. Unlike the First Triumvirate, which had included Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, this alliance was far more ruthless. The Triumvirate immediately launched another round of proscriptions, killing thousands of political opponents. Their primary objective was to eliminate Caesar's assassins, Brutus and Cassius, who had fled to the east. At the Battle of Philippi, 42 BC, the forces of Antony and Octavian decisively defeated Brutus and Cassius, ending any hopes of restoring the Republic. However, tensions soon arose between Octavian and Mark Antony, leading to yet another civil war. Antony allied himself with Cleopatra VII of Egypt, a move that alarmed many Romans, as it seemed he was prioritizing Egyptian interests over Rome's. Octavian skillfully used propaganda to portray Antony as a traitor, depicting Cleopatra as a seductress who had corrupted him. This culminated in the Battle of Actium, 31 BCE, where Octavian's fleet, led by his brilliant general Agrippa, defeated Antony and Cleopatra's forces. The lovers fled to Egypt, where they ultimately committed suicide, marking the final collapse of the Second Triumvirate. With Antony and Cleopatra dead, Octavian emerged as the uncontested ruler of Rome. In 27 BCE, he officially ended the Republic and was granted the title Augustus, becoming Rome's first emperor. Though he maintained the illusion of republican institutions, power was now concentrated in a single individual. The Republic had fallen, and the Roman Empire was born. While the Republic had lasted for nearly 5 centuries, its decline had been inevitable due to deep-seated social conflicts, military reforms that shifted loyalty away from the state, and the rise of ambitious leaders who placed personal power above tradition. Rome had transformed, but its legacy, both as a republic and an empire, would shape Western civilization for centuries to come. The Augustan Age marked the dawn of the Roman Empire, a period of stability and prosperity that followed the turbulent decline of the Republic. Octavian, later known as Augustus, emerged as Rome's first emperor after the decisive defeat of Mark Antony and Cleopatra in 31 BC. Despite assuming absolute power, Augustus carefully maintained the illusion of republican governance, portraying himself as the princeps or first citizen rather than a monarch. This strategic move allowed him to consolidate authority without provoking outright resistance from Rome's deeply ingrained republican traditions. His reign initiated a period of political, economic, and military transformation that would define Rome for centuries. Augustus embarked on extensive reforms to stabilize the empire, reshaping its governance, economy, military, and society. One of his most critical actions was reorganizing the Senate, reducing its numbers from 900 to 600 and ensuring that its members were loyal to him. He also created a professional civil service, which helped streamline administration across the vast empire. Tax collection was centralized, reducing corruption and increasing state revenues. Recognizing the potential threat of powerful military generals, Augustus implemented reforms that made the army more professional and loyal directly to the emperor rather than individual commanders. He reduced the number of legions from around 60 to 28, ensuring that only those devoted to the state remained. Soldiers were now required to serve for 20 years, and upon retirement, they were granted land or pensions, further cementing their loyalty to Augustus. Additionally, he established the Praetorian Guard, an elite force responsible for protecting the emperor. This personal guard would later become a significant force in Roman politics, sometimes influencing or even orchestrating the selection of emperors. One of the defining features of the Augustan Age was the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, a period of relative stability and minimal military conflict that lasted for approximately 2 centuries. Before Augustus, Rome had been plagued by civil wars, political assassinations, and economic turmoil, but his leadership ushered in an era of unprecedented growth and prosperity. Trade flourished, aided by the expansion of Roman roads and the standardization of currency, which facilitated commerce across the empire. The denarius, a silver coin introduced by Augustus, became the standard currency and helped unify the vast Roman economy. Infrastructure projects boomed under his rule, with the construction of aqueducts, roads, bridges, and temples. The famous Via Appia and other major roads were expanded, improving communication and trade between different regions. The city of Rome itself underwent a transformation, with Augustus famously claiming, "I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble." Public buildings, including the Forum of Augustus, the Temple of Mars Ultor, and the Era Pacis, were built to reflect Rome's newfound grandeur. These projects not only glorified Augustus' rule, but also provided employment for the masses, further stabilizing society. The economic prosperity of the Pax Romana was supported by a vast and interconnected trade network. Goods flowed from one end of the empire to the other, with grain from Egypt feeding Rome's population, olive oil from Hispania enriching the economy, and luxury goods from the east, such as silk and spices, making their way into Roman markets. Augustus ensured that Rome maintained tight control over these trade routes, particularly those leading to the provinces, which played a crucial role in sustaining the empire. Alongside economic growth, governance improved significantly. Augustus introduced reforms that allowed for more efficient administration of the provinces. Governors were appointed based on merit rather than political favoritism, and the legal system was refined to provide greater uniformity across the empire. The concept of Roman citizenship expanded under his rule, integrating diverse populations into the empire and fostering a sense of unity. Augustus also undertook military campaigns to secure Rome's borders and expand its influence. One of his earliest conquests was the annexation of Egypt in 30 BCE, following the defeat of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Egypt became one of Rome's most valuable provinces, serving as the empire's primary source of grain. Augustus also focused on expanding Roman control in the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain and Portugal, where he waged a series of wars to subdue the native tribes. The conquest of Hispania was significant not only for its rich natural resources, such as silver and gold, but also for its strategic importance in securing Rome's western frontiers. In the north, Augustus aimed to extend Roman territory into Germania, launching campaigns to bring the Germanic tribes under Roman rule. However, his ambitions suffered a major setback in 9 CE, when 3 Roman legions, led by Publius Quinctilius Varus, were ambushed and destroyed in the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest by the Germanic leader Arminius. This defeat was one of the worst military disasters in Roman history and led Augustus to abandon large-scale conquests in Germania, focusing instead on consolidating Rome's existing borders along the Rhine and Danube rivers. While Augustus' military campaigns played a crucial role in shaping the empire, his domestic policies had an equally profound impact. He sought to revive traditional Roman values, promoting moral legislation aimed at strengthening family life and encouraging population growth. Laws were enacted to reward marriage and childbirth, while penalizing adultery and celibacy among the elite. The emperor also patronized art and literature, fostering what became known as the Golden Age of Latin literature. Writers such as Virgil, Horace, and Ovid flourished under Augustus' patronage, producing works that glorified Rome and reinforced the emperor's image. Virgil's epic poem, the Aeneid, became Rome's national epic, linking Augustus to the legendary Trojan hero Aeneas and legitimizing his rule as part of Rome's divine destiny. Despite his success, Augustus was not without challenges. His carefully crafted system of governance, though effective during his lifetime, raised questions about succession. The transition from a republic to an empire meant that Rome's leadership depended on a single ruler, making the issue of inheritance critical. Augustus had no surviving sons, and his intended heirs, including his nephew Marcellus and his close ally Agrippa, died before him. Eventually, he adopted Tiberius, his stepson, ensuring a smooth transition of power upon his death in 14 CE. While Tiberius would maintain many of Augustus' policies, later emperors would struggle with the balance between autocracy and stability, leading to periods of excess and corruption. One of Augustus' most enduring legacies was the establishment of the Praetorian Guard, an elite military force responsible for protecting the emperor. While initially intended as a personal security detail, the Praetorian Guard grew into a powerful political entity, influencing imperial succession and even orchestrating assassinations in later years. This force, stationed in and around Rome, ensured the emperor's safety but also became a double-edged sword, as emperors who failed to maintain their favor often met untimely ends. In the grand scope of history, the Augustan Age stands as a transformative period that reshaped Rome from a chaotic republic into a stable and centralized empire. Augustus' political acumen, military strategies, and economic policies laid the groundwork for the Roman Empire's golden era. His reign was characterized by stability, prosperity, and expansion, allowing Rome to dominate the Mediterranean world for centuries. However, the success of his rule also revealed the vulnerabilities of a system dependent on a single ruler, foreshadowing the challenges that would later emerge in maintaining imperial stability. Nonetheless, The legacy of Augustus endured, as his reforms and governance model influenced not only Rome's future, but also the development of Western political thought, administration, and culture. The Golden Age of Rome, spanning from the late 1st century CE to the mid-2nd century CE, was a period of unparalleled stability, prosperity, and cultural achievement. This era was largely shaped by the reigns of the five good emperors: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, who governed Rome with wisdom, justice, and a focus on the well-being of their subjects. Unlike the chaotic transitions of earlier emperors, these rulers were not direct heirs, but were instead chosen for their abilities and governance skills, leading to a period of efficient administration and relative peace. This practice of adoptive succession, where emperors selected and trained capable successors rather than relying on bloodline inheritance, allowed for a degree of political stability that had been absent in previous centuries. The empire reached its greatest territorial extent under Trajan, 98 to 117 CE, stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia, while Hadrian and his successors focused on consolidating and securing its borders rather than further expansion. One of the defining features of this Golden Age was the remarkable architectural and engineering feats that transformed Rome and its provinces. Public works were constructed on an unprecedented scale, reflecting both the empire's wealth and its rulers' desire to leave a lasting legacy. The most iconic of these projects was the Colosseum, commissioned by Vespasian and completed under Titus in 80 CE. This massive amphitheater, capable of holding around 50,000 spectators, became the center of Roman entertainment, hosting gladiatorial contests, animal hunts, and public spectacles. The Colosseum was a symbol of Rome's grandeur and engineering prowess, using advanced techniques such as concrete vaulting and an intricate system of underground tunnels. In addition to entertainment, infrastructure projects flourished, particularly aqueducts, which supplied fresh water to cities across the empire. These massive structures, such as the Aqua Claudia and Pont du Gard, enabled urban centers to support large populations and maintain public baths, fountains, and sanitation systems. Roman roads, another hallmark of this era, connected the vast empire, facilitating trade, military movement, and communication. The saying, "all roads lead to Rome," was not merely figurative. Rome's engineers built over 250,000 miles of roads, ensuring that soldiers, officials, and merchants could travel efficiently across the empire. The prosperity of this period was also reflected in the development and codification of Roman law and administration. The legal system, which had evolved over centuries, became more structured and comprehensive, laying the foundation for many modern legal principles. Under emperors like Hadrian, reforms were implemented to make laws more standardized and accessible to all Roman citizens, regardless of their social status. The Edict of Perpetuality, introduced by Hadrian, ensured that provincial governors adhered to a consistent legal code, reducing corruption and arbitrary rulings. The concept of citizenship expanded during this era, culminating in the Constitutio Antoniniana of 212 CE, issued slightly after the Golden Age, which granted Roman citizenship to all free men in the empire. This legal expansion helped integrate the provinces more fully into Rome. Economically, Rome thrived during this period due to its robust trade networks and resource management. The empire's sheer size allowed for a highly interconnected economy, with goods flowing seamlessly between provinces. Egypt served as the empire's breadbasket, supplying vast quantities of grain to feed the massive population of Rome, while Spain and Gaul contributed wine and olive oil, and North Africa produced abundant cereals. The Mediterranean, often referred to as Mare Nostrum, our sea, by the Romans, was a bustling hub of commerce, facilitating trade between Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Luxury goods, such as silk from China, spices from India, and ivory from Africa, were highly sought after by the Roman elite, demonstrating the vast reach of Roman commerce. Coinage, particularly the denarius, played a crucial role in maintaining economic stability, serving as a standardized currency across the empire. Trade flourished in cities like Ostia, Rome's main port, Carthage, and Alexandria, where bustling marketplaces showcased the empire's economic vitality. The combination of stable leadership, architectural achievements, legal advancements, and economic prosperity during the reigns of the five good emperors made this period a true golden age. However, underlying challenges, including border pressures, economic strains, and the increasing power of the military, would eventually disrupt this stability. Nonetheless, the legacy of this era persisted, influencing governance, infrastructure, and law for centuries to come. The 3rd century CE was one of the most turbulent periods in Roman history, marking a significant departure from the stability of the previous centuries. The crisis began in earnest after the death of Septimius Severus, 193 to 211 CE, the founder of the Severan dynasty. Although Severus had strengthened the military and expanded Rome's frontiers, his policies placed an enormous financial burden on the empire. His successors, including Caracalla, Elagabalus, and Severus Alexander, struggled to maintain control. Caracalla's Constitutio Antoniniana, 212 C, which granted Roman citizenship to all free men in the empire, was a double-edged sword. While it expanded tax revenues, it also diluted the privileges that once defined Roman identity. Political instability intensified, with emperors rising and falling in rapid succession, many assassinated by their own troops. The growing influence of the Praetorian Guard further weakened imperial authority, as they often dictated who would rule Rome. This era of instability culminated in what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century, 235 to 284 CE, a period of nearly 50 years during which Rome was plagued by internal civil wars, economic collapse, and relentless external invasions. Between 235 and 285 CE, more than 20 emperors ruled Rome, many of whom met violent ends. The empire faced constant threats on multiple fronts. The Sassanid Persians in the east launched devastating attacks, even capturing Emperor Valerian in 260 CE, while Germanic tribes like the Goths, Franks, and Alemanni repeatedly breached Rome's northern borders. The crisis led to economic devastation as inflation soared due to the reckless debasement of the denarius. Trade networks collapsed, cities declined, and the once thriving economy faltered. Additionally, the empire suffered from frequent outbreaks of plague, further reducing its population and military strength. Rome's salvation came in the form of Diocletian, r. 284 to 305 C, a general who seized power and enacted sweeping reforms. Recognizing that the empire had grown too vast for a single ruler to manage effectively, he introduced the Tetrarchy, rule of 4, dividing the empire into eastern and western halves, each governed by an Augustus, senior emperor, and a Caesar, junior emperor. This system aimed to provide better military and administrative control, reducing the chaos of succession crises. Diocletian also instituted strict economic controls, attempting to curb inflation with price edicts and labor regulations. He bolstered the military, fortified frontiers, and undertook a massive bureaucratic expansion. However, while these reforms temporarily stabilized Rome, they also entrenched a rigid system of governance that would eventually contribute to further divisions. The real turning point in Rome's transformation came with the rise of Constantine the Great, r. 306 to 337 CE. Emerging victorious from a series of civil wars, Constantine consolidated power and made several landmark decisions that reshaped the empire's trajectory. One of his most enduring legacies was the foundation of Constantinople in 330 CE, built on the ancient city of Byzantium. Strategically positioned between Europe and Asia, Constantinople became the new capital of the empire, symbolizing a shift in power from the Latin-speaking West to the Greek-speaking East. This move laid the foundation for the future Byzantine Empire, which would outlast the western half of Rome by nearly 1,000 years. Constantine also reformed the military and economy, strengthening Rome's eastern defenses and ensuring a more centralized administration. One of the most profound transformations during this period was the rise of Christianity within the Roman world. For centuries, Christians have been a persecuted minority, often scapegoated by emperors during times of crisis. Under emperors like Nero, Decius, and Diocletian, Christians faced brutal executions, mass arrests, and destruction of their sacred texts. However, despite these efforts, Christianity continued to spread, appealing to a broad range of people due to its promise of salvation, community, and moral teachings. The pivotal shift occurred in 312 CE, when Constantine, before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, claimed to have seen a vision of a cross with the words "In hoc signo vinces," in this sign, you will conquer. After his victory, Constantine attributed his success to the Christian God and soon after issued the Edict of Milan, 313 CE, which granted religious tolerance to Christians and restored their confiscated properties. The gradual integration of Christianity into Roman governance became more pronounced over the next few decades. Constantine actively supported the Church, funding the construction of grand basilicas such as St. Peter's in Rome and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. In 325 CE, he convened the Council of Nicaea, a landmark gathering of bishops aimed at resolving theological disputes, particularly the Arian controversy over the nature of Christ. The council produced the Nicene Creed, a foundational statement of Christian belief that would shape Orthodox doctrine for centuries. While Constantine himself was baptized only on his deathbed, his patronage of Christianity marked a fundamental shift in Roman religious policy. The final step in Christianity's ascendance came under Theodosius I, r. 379 to 395 CE, who declared Christianity the official state religion of Rome through the Edict of Thessalonica, 380 CE. Pagan practices, once central to Roman identity, were increasingly suppressed. Temples were closed, sacrifices were outlawed, and traditional religious institutions, such as the Vestals and the Oracle of Delphi, fell into decline. The transformation of Rome from a polytheistic society to a Christian one had profound cultural and philosophical implications. Classical Greco-Roman philosophy, which had long dominated intellectual life, gradually gave way to Christian theology and doctrine. Thinkers like Augustine of Hippo blended classical philosophy with Christian teachings, shaping medieval thought for centuries. Despite the religious transformation, Rome remained politically unstable. Following Theodosius' death in 395 CE, the empire was permanently divided between his two sons, with the Western Roman Empire ruled from Ravenna and Milan, and the Eastern Roman Empire centered in Constantinople. This division left the western half vulnerable to external threats, particularly from Germanic tribes such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns. By the late 5th century, the Western Roman Empire crumbled under these pressures, culminating in the fall of Rome in 476 CE when the last emperor, Romulus Augustus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. Meanwhile, the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to thrive, preserving much of Roman law, administration, and culture for another 1,000 years. The period of crisis and division and the rise of Christianity were defining moments in Rome's long history. While political fragmentation and military pressures led to the decline of the Western Roman Empire, the rise of Christianity ensured that Rome's cultural and ideological influence would endure long after its fall. The transformation from a pagan, militaristic superpower into a Christian-dominated civilization laid the groundwork for medieval Europe and the continuation of Roman traditions in the Byzantine world. The legacy of Rome, both as an imperial force and as a spiritual center, continues to shape modern governance, law, and religious institutions today. The decline of the Roman Empire was not the result of a single catastrophic event, but rather a prolonged process of economic stagnation, military weakness, and internal corruption that eroded the empire's foundations over centuries. By the 4th and 5th century CE, Rome was struggling to maintain its vast territories, facing increasing pressure from external threats while simultaneously dealing with severe internal decay. Economic troubles, reliance on mercenary forces, and political instability all contributed to the gradual disintegration of imperial authority, culminating in the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE. Though the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, would endure for nearly 1,000 more years, the fall of the western half marked the end of Rome's dominance as the ruling power of the Mediterranean world. One of the primary causes of Rome's decline was its over-reliance on mercenary armies, particularly those composed of Germanic and other non-Roman recruits. The Roman military, once a disciplined and formidable force, had evolved into a fragmented and unreliable institution by the 4th century. As Rome expanded, it increasingly relied on foederati, or barbarian allies, to supplement its legions. These mercenaries, often drawn from Germanic tribes such as the Visigoths, Vandals, and Franks, were given land and privileges in exchange for military service. However, their loyalty was questionable, as many of these groups had their own leaders, ambitions, and grievances against Rome. In several instances, mercenaries turned against their Roman employers, rebelling or siding with enemy forces when it suited them. The empire's inability to field a strong native Roman army further weakened its defensive capabilities, leaving its borders vulnerable to invasions. The economic decline of the empire was another major factor that contributed to its collapse. Inflation had been a persistent issue since the 3rd century, exacerbated by reckless debasement of currency. As emperors sought to fund military campaigns and administrative costs, they reduced the silver content in Roman coins, leading to widespread inflation and a loss of confidence in Roman money. Additionally, heavy taxation burdened the lower classes, while the elite often found ways to evade their financial responsibilities. The economic divide between the wealthy senatorial aristocracy and the struggling plebeians widened, leading to increased resentment and social unrest. Furthermore, land distribution issues caused long-term damage to Rome's agricultural base. The latifundious system, in which large estates were owned by a small number of elite families, resulted in rural depopulation, as small farmers were driven off their lands. Many sought refuge in the cities or became dependent on state-sponsored welfare, further draining the empire's already struggling economy. Compounding these economic problems was widespread internal corruption and the weakening of central authority. The Roman administrative system, once highly efficient, had become riddled with nepotism, incompetence, and bribery. Civil officials prioritized personal gain over governance, leading to inefficiency in tax collection, law enforcement, and military organization. The frequent assassination and deposition of emperors created political instability, with power often changing hands through violent means rather than orderly succession. As rival factions vied for control, Rome's ability to respond to external threats diminished. Corruption extended to provincial governors, who exploited local populations for personal wealth rather than strengthening imperial defenses. This erosion of centralized control left many regions of the empire to fend for themselves, further accelerating the fragmentation of Roman power. One of the most significant conflicts of the late empire was the Gothic Wars, which had a profound impact on Rome's decline. The Visigoths, a Germanic tribe, had been pushed westward by the expansion of the Huns and sought refuge within Roman borders. In 376 CE, the Eastern Roman Emperor Valens allowed them to settle in Roman territory, but mistreatment by Roman officials led to a full-scale revolt. The conflict culminated in the Battle of Adrianople, 378 CE, where the Visigoths, under Fritigern, decisively defeated the Roman army, killing Emperor Valens in the process. This defeat exposed the empire's vulnerability and marked a turning point in Roman history. No longer able to keep barbarian tribes at bay, Rome was forced to negotiate with these groups, granting them increasing autonomy within its borders. The inability to effectively manage relations with the Visigoths and other migrating peoples would ultimately contribute to the empire's downfall. The rise of barbarian invasions in the 5th century sealed the fate of the Western Roman Empire. One of the most formidable threats came from the Huns, a nomadic group from Central Asia who launched devastating raids across Europe. Under the leadership of Attila the Hun, they terrorized both the Eastern and Western Roman empires, demanding tribute and sacking cities. The Huns' aggression forced many Germanic tribes, such as the Goths, Vandals, and Burgundians, to migrate further into Roman lands in search of safety and resources. These movements created immense pressure on Rome's borders, overwhelming its ability to maintain order. Among the most infamous events of this period was the sack of Rome in 410 CE, led by Alaric, king of the Visigoths. This marked the first time in nearly 800 years that the city of Rome had fallen to a foreign enemy. Though the Eastern Roman Empire remained intact, the psychological impact of Rome's sack was profound, shattering the illusion of imperial invincibility. While Alaric's forces did not destroy Rome entirely, they plundered its wealth, disrupted its institutions, and humiliated its leadership. The event symbolized the growing power of barbarian groups within Roman territory and foreshadowed the empire's eventual disintegration. The weakening of the Western Roman Empire continued throughout the 5th century as successive emperors proved unable to halt the decline. Rome suffered from internal divisions, with powerful generals often acting as kingmakers, elevating and deposing emperors at will. The empire's infrastructure deteriorated, trade routes became increasingly unsafe, and local economies collapsed. Many provincial territories, once under direct Roman control, effectively became autonomous, ruled by local warlords or barbarian kings who no longer recognized the authority of Rome. The final blow came in 476 CE, when the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. Unlike previous barbarian invasions, this event marked the formal end of the Western Roman Empire, as Odoacer refused to recognize any Roman authority and declared himself king of Italy. While the Eastern Roman Empire, centered in Constantinople, continued to exist and even thrive under leaders like Justinian I, the fall of the western half signified the collapse of Roman rule in Western Europe. Despite its political demise, Rome's legacy endured in various forms. The Roman legal system, administrative structures, and cultural achievements influenced medieval European kingdoms, while the Roman Catholic Church preserved Latin traditions and continued to wield significant power in the region. Many Germanic rulers, including the Franks and Lombards, adopted aspects of Roman governance, ensuring that Rome's influence would persist long after the empire's fall. The Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, carried on Roman traditions for nearly a millennium, maintaining a sophisticated bureaucracy, military, and economy that preserved elements of Roman civilization. The decline and fall of Rome remains one of the most studied events in history, symbolizing the fragility of even the mightiest empires. While external pressures from barbarian invasions and military defeats played a crucial role, the empire's downfall was also a product of internal corruption, economic mismanagement, and political instability. The inability to reform its military, the reliance on mercenaries, the collapse of trade networks, and the fragmentation of central authority all contributed to Rome's eventual fall. However, Rome's cultural and intellectual heritage continued to shape the world long after its empire had vanished, influencing law, governance, architecture, and philosophy for centuries to come. The survival of the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, ensured that the legacy of Rome endured long after the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE. While the western half succumbed to barbarian invasions, economic instability, and political fragmentation, the eastern half, centered in Constantinople, remained a powerful and sophisticated state for nearly 1,000 more years. Unlike its western counterpart, the Byzantine Empire benefited from a stronger economy, a more defensible capital, and a well-organized administrative structure, which allowed it to withstand the pressures that had overwhelmed Rome. Under rulers such as Justinian I, the Byzantines even attempted to reclaim some of the lost western territories, keeping the dream of a unified Roman world alive, albeit briefly. One of the most ambitious and influential Byzantine emperors was Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE, whose reign marked a high point in the empire's history. Determined to restore Rome's former glory, Justinian launched a series of military campaigns to reconquer lost western provinces, particularly in North Africa, Italy, and southern Spain. His general, Belisarius, achieved remarkable victories against the Vandals, Ostrogoths, and Visigoths, temporarily bringing parts of the former empire back under Roman control. However, these conquests were costly and unsustainable, as defending the newly acquired territories drained the empire's resources. The wars, combined with a devastating plague in 541 CE that killed a significant portion of the population, ultimately weakened the empire and made it vulnerable to future invasions. Beyond his military campaigns, Justinian's legal and architectural achievements left a lasting legacy. The Corpus Juris Civilis, or Justinian Code, was a monumental compilation of Roman laws and legal principles that would influence European legal systems for centuries. His patronage of architecture led to the construction of the Hagia Sophia, one of the greatest architectural wonders of the medieval world. This magnificent church, later converted into a mosque and now a museum, symbolized the fusion of Roman engineering and Christian spirituality that defined the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire played a crucial role in preserving Roman culture, traditions, and knowledge. As the Western Roman Empire fragmented, much of its literature, philosophy, and administrative practices were lost or altered by the Germanic kingdoms that replaced it. However, the Byzantines maintained a direct continuation of Roman governance. Language, Greek replaced Latin as the dominant language over time, and scholarship. Byzantine scholars preserved and copied classical texts, ensuring that the works of Plato, Aristotle, Virgil, and Cicero survived. This intellectual tradition later influenced the Islamic Golden Age and helped spark the European Renaissance, when Byzantine scholars fled to Italy after the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Despite its resilience, the Byzantine Empire faced constant external threats from both the Persians, Arabs, and later the Turks. The rise of Islam in the 7th century led to the loss of key territories such as Egypt, Syria, and North Africa, severely weakening the empire's power and economic base. Although it experienced periods of resurgence, particularly under rulers like Basil II, the empire gradually declined due to internal strife, economic problems, and increasing pressure from the Ottoman Turks. The final blow came in 1453, when Mehmed II, Mehmed the Conqueror, led the Ottoman Empire in a decisive siege of Constantinople. Despite a valiant defense, the city fell, marking the end of the Byzantine Empire and the last vestiges of the ancient Roman world. With its fall, Constantinople became Istanbul, the capital of the Ottoman Empire, but the legacy of Byzantium lived on in its influence over Eastern Orthodox Christianity, law. The fall of the Roman Empire, both East and West, has been the subject of extensive historical debate, with scholars proposing various reasons for its decline. One of the most famous works on this subject is Edward Gibbon's The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, 1776 to 1788. Gibbon argued that the empire's decline was primarily due to internal decay, moral corruption, and the weakening of civic virtue. According to his thesis, Rome's citizens had become complacent and dependent on luxury, leading to a loss of military discipline and civic responsibility. He also controversially suggested that the rise of Christianity played a role in the empire's decline, as it shifted focus away from military and civic duty towards spiritual concerns, undermining Rome's traditional values. Other historians have debated whether Rome's fall was caused more by internal weaknesses or external pressures. Internal factors include economic stagnation, bureaucratic inefficiency, and political instability, all of which weakened the empire's ability to defend itself. Additionally, plagues, declining agricultural production, and population decline further strained Rome's resources. On the other hand, external pressures such as barbarian invasions, Persian conflicts, and Hunnic migrations created immense challenges that even a well-functioning empire might have struggled to overcome. Some argue that Rome could have survived longer if not for the relentless waves of invasions, particularly from the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns. One of the most debated aspects of Rome's fall is is the role of Christianity. Some scholars, like Gibbon, view Christianity as a weakening force, arguing that it discouraged traditional Roman virtues of discipline and self-sacrifice. The shift from a pagan, militaristic culture to one focused on spiritual salvation and monastic life may have contributed to Rome's inability to maintain its military strength. Others, however, argue the opposite, that Christianity helped sustain the empire by providing a unifying ideological framework, especially in the Byzantine East. The Church played a major role in maintaining social cohesion, aiding the poor, and preserving learning during times of chaos. Ultimately, Christianity's impact on Rome's decline remains a topic of ongoing scholarly debate. Beyond academic discussion, the fall of Rome carries important lessons for modern civilizations. The slow erosion of political stability, economic troubles, and increasing reliance on mercenary forces serve as cautionary tales for contemporary global powers. Many historians draw parallels between Rome and modern superpowers, noting how political corruption, income inequality, economic instability, and overextended military commitments can contribute to the decline of even the most powerful states. The concept of imperial overstretch, in which a state expands beyond its ability to govern effectively, is often cited as a warning for nations that attempt to exert control over vast territories without adequate resources or strategy. Furthermore, Rome's reliance on non-citizen soldiers and the gradual erosion of traditional military discipline mirror concerns in modern defense policies. Many historical observers argue that when a state loses control over its military, or when its armed forces are no longer composed of its own citizens, it becomes vulnerable to both external and internal threats. Rome's declining sense of civic responsibility, where the wealthy elite distance themselves from governance and military service, can also be seen as a cautionary tale for contemporary societies struggling with political disengagement and economic inequality. Another key lesson from Rome's fall is the importance of economic resilience. The collapse of Rome's monetary system, rampant inflation, and excessive taxation contributed significantly to its decline. Similarly, modern economies face the risk of financial crises, currency devaluation, and wealth disparities that can weaken national stability. Rome's decline also highlights the dangers of administrative corruption, as inefficient governance and bureaucratic decay left the empire vulnerable to both internal strife and external invasion. Despite its fall, Rome's influence remains deeply embedded in Western civilization. Its legal system, architectural achievements, governance structures, and philosophical traditions continue to shape the modern world. The concept of a republic, the rule of law, and civic duty, all hallmarks of Roman society, are foundational principles in many modern democracies. Even in its decline, Rome provided a blueprint for future civilizations, proving that while empires may rise and fall, their cultural and intellectual contributions can endure for millennia. In the end, the fall of Rome was not the collapse of a single city or state, but rather the transformation of a vast and complex civilization. While the Western Roman Empire disintegrated, its ideas, laws, and institutions lived on through the Byzantine Empire, the Catholic Church, and the emerging medieval European kingdoms. The story of Rome serves as both a testament to the heights that human civilization can achieve and a warning about the forces that can lead to its downfall. Whether seen as a lesson in resilience or a cautionary tale of decline, Rome's legacy remains an essential part of world history. The rise and fall of the Roman Empire remains one of the most compelling narratives in human history. Spanning over a millennium, from its mythical founding in 753 BCE to the fall of Constantinople in 1453 CE, Rome's legacy is vast and complex. At its height, Rome controlled vast territories across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, shaping the political, military, economic, and cultural landscapes of the ancient world. The empire was built on a foundation of military strength, administrative efficiency, legal innovation, and cultural adaptability, allowing it to dominate much of the known world for centuries. However, like all great empires, Rome eventually succumbed to a combination of internal weaknesses and external pressures, leading to its gradual decline. The story of Rome is not just about conquest and power, but also about governance, resilience, adaptation, and ultimately, transformation. The rise of Rome began with its humble origins as a small settlement on the banks of the Tiber River. Through a mix of military conquests, strategic alliances, and political reforms, Rome expanded from a monarchy to a republic in 509 BCE, laying the groundwork for its eventual empire. The Republican period saw Rome's remarkable expansion, particularly during the Punic Wars against Carthage, which solidified its dominance over the Mediterranean. Rome's military success was driven by its highly disciplined legions, innovative battlefield tactics, and an ability to integrate conquered peoples into its political system. However, as Rome's power grew, so did internal tensions. The Republic struggled with economic inequality, political corruption, and military ambition, ultimately leading to its transformation into an empire under Augustus following the assassination of Julius Caesar in 44 BCE. The imperial period ushered in an era of unprecedented stability, often referred to as the Pax Romana, 27 BC, 180 C, during which Rome enjoyed economic prosperity, cultural flourishing, and vast infrastructure development. The empire reached its greatest territorial extent under Trajan, encompassing lands from Britain to Mesopotamia. Architectural and engineering marvels such as the Colosseum, aqueducts, and vast road networks showcased Roman ingenuity, while legal advancements like the Justinian Code influenced modern legal systems. The five good emperors, particularly Marcus Aurelius, embodied the philosophical and administrative ideals of Rome, ensuring a period of relative stability and prosperity. Despite its grandeur, cracks in Rome's foundation began to appear. By the 3rd century CE, the empire faced a series of crises, including economic troubles, political instability, and external invasions. The reliance on mercenary armies, inflation, and bureaucratic corruption weakened Rome's ability to respond to threats effectively. The crisis of the 3rd century, 235 to 284 CE, saw Rome nearly collapse due to civil wars, plagues, and constant threats from Germanic tribes and the Persian Empire. The empire was temporarily stabilized under Diocletian, who introduced the Tetrarchy to divide and manage the vast territories more effectively. However, the division of the empire into Eastern and Western has ultimately contributed to the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, when Romulus Augustulus was deposed by the Germanic leader Odoacer. While the Western Roman Empire disintegrated, the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, endured for nearly another 1,000 years, preserving much of Roman culture, administration, and law. Under Justinian I, Byzantium attempted to reclaim lost Western territories, but these efforts were short-lived. The empire gradually declined due to economic struggles, internal conflicts, and continuous wars with external forces, culminating in the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks in 1453 CE. Rome's influence on modern politics, law, and culture is immeasurable. Many modern political institutions, such as republican governance, the concept of a Senate, and checks and balances, find their origins in Roman political structures. Roman law, particularly the Justinian Code, became the foundation of legal systems in many parts of Europe and beyond. Additionally, Rome's cultural and linguistic impact is still evident today, with Latin serving as the basis for Romance languages such as Italian, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. The influence of Roman art, architecture, literature, and philosophy can be seen across centuries, from the Renaissance to modern government buildings modeled after Roman designs. The idea of Rome has remained a powerful symbol in European and world history. Many later states and rulers sought to revive or claim the Roman legacy, including the Holy Roman Empire, the Byzantines, who called themselves Romans until their fall in 1453, and even modern political ideologies that admire Rome's imperial efficiency. The term Third Rome has been used to describe Moscow in the Russian tradition, reflecting the continued influence of Roman governance and imperial ideology. Even today, References to Roman discipline, governance, and military prowess are common in political and military thought. The cyclical nature of empires is one of the most important lessons from Rome's history. Empires rise through military conquest, economic expansion, and strong leadership, but they often fall due to overextension, internal decay, and external threats. Similar patterns can be seen in other historical empires, from the Mongols to the British Empire. Rome's story serves as a cautionary tale for modern superpowers, highlighting the dangers of political corruption, economic mismanagement, and military overreach. The challenges Rome faced, such as maintaining a vast and diverse empire, dealing with economic inequality, and managing political unrest, are issues that many nations still grapple with today. The rise and fall of the Roman Empire is a profound narrative of human ambition, resilience, and eventual decline. While Rome as a political entity may have fallen, its ideas, innovations, and cultural contributions continue to shape the modern world. From legal systems and political thought to art and architecture, Rome's legacy endures, reminding us of both the greatness and the fragility of human civilization. The lessons of Rome remain relevant today, offering insights into the strengths and weaknesses of empires and the enduring power of cultural influence long after political structures fade.